You are tuned to Community Radio Networks. It is Wednesday, the 15th of May, and we have all the information for you to take on the day today. We will get you first the world news, followed by the financial news, some stories from the annals of history, and your social calendar, all coming up right here on Community Radio Networks. Let's start with the world news first. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news, read by Shabnam Madgil. Thousands of flag-waving Palestinians marched in northern Israel to commemorate the flight and forced flight of Palestinians during the 1948 war surrounding Israel's creation and to demand the right of refugees to return. Many of the about 3,000 people also called for an end to the conflict in Gaza as they took part in the march near the city of Haifa, marking the Nakba, or the catastrophe, when hundreds of thousands of Palestinians fled or were driven out during the 1948 war that accompanied Israel's creation. Palestinians are set to commemorate that loss of their homeland today by observing Nakba Day, which marks the flight of more than 700,000 Palestinians during that 1948 war that led to the establishment of the State of Israel. The Nakba Memorial is held on the 15th of May every year and is marked with marches and demonstrations. Tens of thousands of civilians fled the southern Gaza city of Rafah ahead of this threatened Israeli ground offensive as Palestinians mark the anniversary of their Nakba, or catastrophe. Gun battles between Israel and fighters from Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and smaller Palestinian factions intensified overnight into some of the fiercest in months in both northern and southern Gaza. And Israel's military operation in Rafah has set truce negotiations with Hamas backward, according to mediator Qatar, adding that talks have reached almost a stalemate. The Israeli military said that a vehicle carrying UN staff that was hit in Rafah in southern Gaza was in an active combat zone at the time. The UN said that a UN Security Services member was killed in this attack on a vehicle in Gaza, marking the first death of a UN international employee in the Palestinian territory since the conflict began more than 7 months ago. The UN has launched an investigation into this unidentified strike on a UN car in Rafah. And it is the foreign minister of Turkey, Hakan Fidan, who has said that Turkey has decided to submit its declaration of official intervention in South Africa's genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. And Israel's ambassador to the UN has said that the UN is cooperating with Hamas. As Swiss police moved in early this morning to remove dozens of pro-Palestinian student protesters holed up in the University of Bern. Parliament in Australia's state of Victoria has voted to ban members from wearing the traditional Palestinian keffiyeh and other symbols representing Palestine in the legislative chamber. And the U.S. State Department has moved $1 billion package of weapons aid for Israel into the congressional review process. The latest weapons package includes tank rounds, mortars, and armored tactical vehicles. President Biden said last week he had delayed a shipment of 2,000-pound bombs and 1,700 to 500-pound bombs to Israel over concerns they might be used for a major invasion of Rafah. The Biden administration has told key lawmakers it would send more than $1 billion in additional arms and ammunition to Israel, but it was not immediately known how soon the weapons would be delivered. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said that the U.S. had paused a shipment of the 2,000-pound bombs because we do not believe they should be dropped in densely populated areas. And the trial continued with Michael Cohen's second day of testimony yesterday. The case focuses on Cohen paying former pornographic performer Stormy Daniels $130,000 prior to the 2016 presidential election to allegedly acquire her claims about a 2006 affair with the then real estate tycoon. Yesterday was another action-packed day for the case, including the New York Supreme Court Appellate Division issuing an order rejecting the Trump team's attempt to end a gag order that the 45th president has repeatedly repeatedly slammed as unconstitutional. Trump's legal team had previously demanded that Judge Merchan recuse himself from the case, citing his daughter's work as a Democrat consultant. Now, the trial resumes tomorrow at 9:30 and is to wrap up slightly early at 4 p.m. due to a juror's previous commitment. Cohen is expected to return to the stand to continue cross-examination tomorrow. Today is a day off. He was back in court yesterday for a second day of testimony in Donald Trump's criminal trial, detailing to the jury how he repeatedly lied about his role in orchestrating hush money payments to protect the former president. The much-anticipated cross-examination of Michael Cohen portrayed him as a Trump-hating liar who wants the former president in jail, and the answer was frequently some version of "I don't recall." The appellate division of the New York Supreme Court rejected former President Trump's attempt to end that gag order that has prevented him from speaking publicly about many aspects of the case. Former President Trump slammed the Democratic Party as a group of fascists following a very good day in court, which included continued testimony from his former personal attorney, Michael Cohen. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson assailed the hush money case against Donald Trump yesterday as an illegitimate sham, becoming the highest-ranking Republican to show up at the court, embrace the former president's claims of political persecution, and attack the U.S. system of justice. A remarkable moment in modern American politics, the House Speaker amplified Trump's defense and turning the Republican Party against the federal and state legal systems that are the foundation to the U.S. government and a cornerstone of a democracy. And the husband of the adult film actress Stormy Daniels said that there's a good chance the couple will leave the country if the former President Trump is acquitted in his Manhattan criminal trial. Barrett Blade spoke to CNN about the vitriol his wife, who is a key figure in the controversy over the 2016 hush money payment allegedly made to Daniels on Trump's behalf, and what he has faced. Stormy Daniels' attorney disclosed that the adult film actress wore a bulletproof vest during Donald Trump's hush money trial due to concerns about potential harm out there. Federal prosecutors in Washington, D.C. filed a motion against U.S. District Judge Carl Nichols to order former Trump advisor Steve Bannon to begin serving his 4-month prison sentence after an appeals court last week upheld his conviction on contempt of Congress charges. And the bribery trial of New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez is ready to start with opening statements today as prosecutors seek to convince a jury that the longtime powerful Democrat was willing to sell his influence to benefit 3 businessmen in return for cash, gold bars, and a fancy car. The presidential primary may be decided, but election season marches on. Voters in several states, including Maryland and West Virginia, chose nominees yesterday in critical races that could decide the balance of power on Capitol Hill next year. The matchups are set for 2 key races in this fall's battle for control of the narrowly divided Senate after yesterday's primaries, in which 2 Republican governors, one former and one sitting, advanced, and a Democratic county executive beat a congressman who pumped tens of millions of his own dollars into his campaign. In Maryland, it was popular moderate former Governor Larry Hogan who won the Republican primary. Prince George's County Executive Angela Brooks defeated Representative David Trone, who loaned his campaign at least $62 million in a hard-fought and expensive Democratic primary. And in West Virginia, where Senator Joe Manchin's retirement has handed Republicans a critical pickup opportunity, Governor Jim Justice easily won the GOP primary. An Air Force instructor pilot has died yesterday after the ejection seat of the plane he was in activated while the aircraft was on the ground, according to the Shepherd Air Force Base in Texas. Captain John Robertson of the 80th Operations Support Squadron was seriously injured in the incident at the base and died this morning. The ejection seat of this T-6A Texan II aircraft went off when he was inside. The driver of a pickup truck involved in a morning clash yesterday that killed 8 farm workers and left at least 40 people injured in north central Florida has been charged with 8 counts of driving under the influence and manslaughter. New details are coming in about a head-on collision in Wise County this morning that resulted in the deaths of 4 people. Though 3 of those killed were children, and the Department of Public Safety says the accident involving a tractor trailer and an SUV happened around 6:30 a.m. in Farm Road 1810 at County Road 1340 east of Chico. Jason Carter, the former President Jimmy Carter's grandson, gave an update on his grandfather's health, saying that he's coming to the end. "My grandfather is doing okay," he said. "He's been in hospice, as you know, for almost a year and a half." At the 28th Rosalind Carter, Georgia Mental Health Forum at the Carter Center, Jason Carter, the chair of the Board of Trustees for the global charity established by former President and former First Lady Rosalind Carter in 1982. The 99-year-old Jimmy Carter entered hospice in February of last year, and though hospice care is often associated with the immediate end of a person's life, it's not always a short-term option. And the Carter Center announced that the former president would not receive additional medical intervention. The Delhi, a 947-foot-long Singapore-based cargo vessel that lost electrical power hours before leaving the port of Baltimore and crashing into the Francis Scott Key Bridge, according to this report released by the National Transportation Safety Board. In a span of less than 12 hours, the ship experienced 4 blackouts before colliding with the central truss spans of the Key Bridge on the 26th of March. And this report comes 7 weeks since the disaster killed 6 construction workers, crippled the port of Baltimore, and cut access to the Beltway. The entire ship crew was from India, but it was a Singapore-flagged container ship, the Delhi, that experienced these multiple power outages before colliding with the bridge on the 26th of March, according to this new report. Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker railed against Pride Month, working women, President Biden's leadership during the COVID-19 pandemic, and abortion during a commencement address at the Benedictine College. And the 3-time Super Bowl champion delivered the roughly 20-minute address at the Catholic Private Liberal Arts School in Atchison, Kansas, about 60 miles north of Kansas City. Rory McIlroy has filed for divorce from his wife of 7 years, Erica Stoll, after claiming their marriage is irretrievably broken. The shock news was revealed at the US PGA Championship, where, starting tomorrow, the world number 2 will attempt to win his first major in 10 years. The 36-year-old was seen on the range without his wedding ring, having been pictured wearing it during his final round of the previous weekend's PGA Tour event. Sage, the miniature poodle, has won Best in Show at the 2024 Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show yesterday. The all-black ball of fluff claimed the non-sporting group earlier in the event and cemented herself as a new feminist hero by being the first female Best in Show winner since 2020. And Mercedes, the German Shepherd, winner of the herding group, claimed second honors of the night as Reserve Best in Show. Poodles have an illustrious record at Westminster. 12 standard poodles have taken home the top prize over the years. Poodles of all sizes were also one of the most represented breeds at this year's event, with 43 entrants. However, Sage isn't just a poodle, she's a miniature poodle and the 4th of her kind to claim Westminster's Best in Show. And of course, Sage, this miniature poodle, is from Houston in Texas and won the best show at the 2024 Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show in New York yesterday. 11 people were killed in a series of mass shootings in a small town in the southern Mexico's Chiapas state. The shooting took place in a township known as trafficking route for migrants and drug smuggling activities that has been hit by cartel turf wars in recent months. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is wrapping up his trip to Kyiv, where he reaffirmed the Biden administration's support for Ukraine amid Russia's advances in the Kharkiv region. He said some long-awaited U.S. military assistance had started arriving in Ukraine after months of delays. He arrived in Ukraine yesterday in the first visit by a senior Biden administration official to the war-torn country since the U.S. passed a long-delayed $61 billion military aid package, and as Russian forces appeared to be making advances near Kharkiv, Ukraine's second biggest city. He arrived by train from Poland, and the trip, intended to highlight what the State Department described in a statement as enduring support for Ukraine as it battles a new push by Russia into its northeastern corridor, was not previously disclosed. And Russian President Putin signed a decree appointing a new government, including replacement of a defense minister with a former deputy prime minister who is an economics expert with no military background. He was inaugurated for his new 6-year term on the 7th of this month, and the government submitted its resignation in line with the Russian law, and he reappointed Mikhail Mishustin as prime minister 3 days weeks later, which was quickly approved by the lower house of parliament, and signed a decree moving Sergei Shoigu from his post as defense minister to head of the National Security Council. Russia's air defenses have shot down 10 U.S.-made ATACMS missiles over the annexed Black Sea peninsula of Crimea overnight. And Ukraine has pulled back its troops from several villages in the border region of Kharkiv following continued pressure from Russian forces. President Zelensky will halt all international events scheduled for the coming days, according to his office, as Russian troops push into the northeastern Kharkiv region. President Putin is heading to China for the first foreign visit of his new term, underlining the vital importance of the relationship as Beijing faces growing U.S. pressure to curtail support that's helping Moscow continue its war in Ukraine. The 71-year-old Vladimir Putin, who extended his nearly quarter-century rule in tightly controlled March elections, will visit Beijing starting tomorrow, as well as the northern city of Harbin, where he'll take part in the opening ceremony of the 8th Russian-Chinese Expo, and likely to prioritize countering the U.S. warnings to China over trade with his country at talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping. He hailed Beijing's genuine desire to help resolve the Ukraine crisis in an interview with Chinese state media that was published ahead of this two-day visit to the country. President Emmanuel Macron convened a meeting of top ministers to discuss spiraling violence in the French Pacific territory of New Caledonia after at least 2 people were killed and 4 others were seriously injured. And it was the third day of violent unrest over a constitutional reform pushed by Paris that has roiled the archipelago, which has long sought independence. Deadly violence on this French island of New Caledonia erupted for a third day today, with armed clashes between protesters, militia and police, and buildings and cars set on fire in the capital of the South Pacific archipelago. A search is underway in northern France for armed assailants who killed 2 prison officers and wounded 3 others in an ambush on a prison van, freeing a 30-year-old inmate and drug dealer known as The Fly. The incident marks the first time on-duty prison workers have been killed in France since 1992, and that prison van was transporting inmate Mohamed Amra from a courthouse to a jail in the Normandy region when the hooded assailants arriving in 2 vehicles rammed into the van near an expressway, told Booth, and opened fire. Amra was serving an 18-month prison sentence for aggravated robbery and faces charges of kidnapping and drug-related homicide in the southern port city of Marseille. The number of assailants is unclear. The fugitives remain at large. And a French court has acquitted filmmaker Roman Polanski of defaming a British actor whom he accused of lying after she alleged that he sexually assaulted her as a teenager. This case stems from a 2019 interview with Paris Match magazine, where Polanski accused Charlotte Lewis of a heinous lie for alleging that he raped her in the 1980s when she was 16. Buckingham Palace has revealed the first official portrait of King Charles III since his coronation, and it's proving to be divisive with its lurid red brush strokes. The 8.5 by 6.5 foot painting is by British artist Jonathan Ewer, who has painted high-profile subjects throughout his career, including former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, actor Nicole Kidman, and education activist Malala Yousafzai. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has been sending food, water containers, canvases and other supplies to areas impacted by double disasters in Papua New Guinea. Torrential rains combined with strong winds during March and April triggered flooding and landslides throughout the nation, which comprises the eastern half of the island of New Guinea, north of Australia. And it is after 30 years of dominating South African politics that the ruling African National Congress will face its toughest election this month, as most opinion polls predict it will lose its parliamentary majority for the first time. Once admired under the leadership of Nelson Mandela and regarded as a beacon of hope by the black majority following the fall of apartheid in 1994, the ANC's reputation has been battered by record levels of unemployment, widespread poverty, the collapse of some government services, and more than a decade of corruption scandals, leaving voters disillusioned. President Cyril Ramaphosa hopes that the 29th May ballot will lead to his re-election. But if the ANC does lose its majority, it will force it into a coalition to form a government, also a first for the country, and something that may complicate policy making in Africa's most advanced economy. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Community Radio Networks. And the sun produced its biggest flare in nearly 2 decades yesterday, just days after several solar storms pummeled Earth and created dazzling northern lights in unaccustomed places. Last year's Northern Hemisphere summer was the hottest in 2,000 years. According to this new study that was published, scientists say last year was the hottest year globally since records began in 1850. But the study in the journal Nature indicates human-caused climate change pushed northern's summer highs well beyond anything seen in 2 millennia. Extreme temperatures above 40 degrees centigrade that impacted billions of people across Asia last month are more likely caused by human-caused climate change, states the rapid attribution analysis by an international team of leading climate scientists from the World Weather Attribution Group. India has asked Iran to release nearly 40 Indian seafarers who were detained from 4 different merchant ships seized by the Persian Gulf country over the past 8 months on different charges. Ports, Shipping and Waterways Minister has made the request during a meeting with Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian in Tehran. And the Ministry of Home Affairs today issued the first set of citizenship certificates under the Citizenship Amendment Act. Today itself in Delhi, 300 people are being given citizenship under CAA. A Delhi court today extended the judicial custody of Aam Aadmi Party leader and former Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia till the 30th of this month in a corruption case related to an alleged excise scam. And the Election Commission of India today reportedly summoned Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister DGP to personally explain reasons for the failure to contain post-poll violence. The top Andhra Pradesh officials summoned by the Election Commission headquarters in New Delhi to provide a personal explanation for the administration's inability to prevent post-poll violence. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi today alleged that the BJP wants to destroy the constitution and scrap the reservation provided by tribals, Dalits and backward class. He was addressing an election rally in Odisha's Bolangir and claimed that if the BJP wins this election, it will privatize the public sector and the country will be run by 22 billionaires. The Supreme Court today expressed its displeasure with the Uttarakhand government's handling of forest fires, describing the state's approach as lackadaisical. And we do have, after the Delhi Capitals defeated the Lucknow Supergiants yesterday to keep their slender playoffs qualification hopes alive, that the Rajasthan Royals became the second team to book a spot in the top 4 of the ongoing IPL. Only 6 league matches left in the tournament and 5 teams are still in the fray for the 2 remaining playoff spots. The 2024 IPL has revolutionized T20 cricket with numerous records being shattered throughout the tournament. And during the match between the Delhi Capitals and the Lucknow Supergiants yesterday, the ongoing season witnessed the highest number of sixes ever hit in a single IPL edition. The game featured a total of 20 sixes, bringing the overall tally for the season to 1,125, surpassing the previous record of 1,124 set in the 2022 season. And the race for the position of the Indian cricket team's head coach has intensified as incumbent Rahul Dravid signals his reluctance to continue beyond his current term, which includes in June. With no clear indication of VVS Lakshman, the head coach of the National Cricket Academy, entering the fray, the Board of Control for Cricket in India is exploring alternatives, including seasoned foreign coaches. Pakistan skipper Babar Azam and his short-term predecessor Shaheen Shah Afridi came together to outclass Ireland by 6 wickets in the third and final 2020 international at the Castle Avenue yesterday and sealed the series 2-1. While Gary Kirsten, the newly appointed white ball head coach of Pakistan, will join the national team in England on the 19th of this month, the Pakistan Cricket Board for the first time has hired the services of a mental performance coach, David Reed, besides recruiting Simon Helmut as fielding coach. Pakistan volleyball team captain Murad Jahan feels the country is blessed with immense talent in the sports, but there is a need to harness it, and for that the 30-year-old believes a professional league is essential. In the wake of an astounding volume of released data regarding properties owned by foreigners in Dubai, some of the Pakistani politicians' names in it have downplayed the development, claiming that there was nothing wrong with the practice and that properties under their name were already declared. This data that was released yesterday provides a detailed overview of hundreds of thousands of properties in Dubai and information about their ownership or usage, largely from 2020 and 2022. And prominent names include PPP chairman Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, his siblings Bakhtawar Bhutto Zardari and Asifa Bhutto Zardari, wife of the Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi, Miss Ashraf, and also other prominent individuals whose names appear in the leaks include former Balochistan Chief Minister Sardar Aslam Raisani, media house owner Salman Iqbal, Farhat Shehzadi, also known as Farah Gogi, and other significant names. As may be expected, several elected officials and politically exposed people have a significant presence in the Dubai leaks that cover property ownership up to the spring of 2022. Surprisingly, however, there are some Pakistani families, both political and from the business world, who are widely known to have this base and family homes in Dubai, but are conspicuous by their absence in the property leaks. And this underscores that the data, though robust, is neither a historic account of property ownership, nor is it a complete picture of all properties bought by Pakistanis out there. And among the A-listers on the political landscape are, of course, President Zardari's children, two of whom are elected representatives, Bakhtawar Bhutto Zardari, a Dubai resident, and MNAs Bilawal Bhutto Zardari and Asifa Bhutto Zardari, listed as owners of 4 properties between them. And the 3 siblings are joint owners of 2 apartments, one in Al Safa and another in Jumeirah. Mr. Bakhtawar's real estate portfolio also includes a 4-bedroom penthouse in 23 Marina, an 88-story residential skyscraper that is among the tallest such buildings in the world. Provincial counter-terrorism departments lack clarity on militant groups' dynamics, connections, and operational strategies, apart from facing issues related to coordination, funding, and intelligence gathering. And while these CTDs have established their own specialized intelligence units and analysis wings to study militant behavior, they often lack skills to process data effectively and remain largely dependent on premier intelligence agencies. These were some of the key findings of the research report, Pakistan's Evolving Militant Landscape, State Responses and Policy Options, released by the Islamabad-based think tank, the Pakistan Institute for Peace Studies. The opposition PTI signaled willingness to engage in reconciliation talks with the ruling coalition, but only if certain tough conditions, including withdrawal of all cases against founding party chairman Imran Khan, were met. And this offer was made by a couple of lawmakers belonging to PTI in the National Assembly during a debate on President Zardari's address to a joint sitting of Parliament as the House for the second consecutive day witnessed verbal skirmishes with members accusing each other of seeking military support and undermining democratic institutions. And as the government tried to absolve a spy agency of blame for its alleged attempt to influence the audio leaks case, the Islamabad High Court has issued notices to the ISI, the FIA, and the Intelligence Bureau, as well as the Defense Ministry, and sought response within a week. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you. I do have your financial news coming up in a separate segment in just a minute. I will be right back.
Party on this summer with the Flex Your Credit Select.
Let's go ahead and get you your financial news. Every morning we get you the financial news right after the world news. And here it is for today, which is the 15th of May, as we wish you all a lovely Wednesday. The U.S. equities poised to hold gains of the previous session's tech-led rally as traders bet that today's key U.S. inflation report won't undermine the case for Federal Reserve interest rate cuts. Futures contracts on the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100 were little changed, while the MSCI All-Country World Index extended its longest run of advances since January. And in the run-up to U.S. Consumer Price Index data, the S&P 500 advanced yesterday, despite Jeremy Powell signals that interest rates will be higher for longer and a mixed reading on producer inflation. The Nasdaq scored a record closing high yesterday, and the S&P 500 and the Dow also advanced as Jeremy Powell reassured investors while they digested yesterday's data and waited for today's crucial consumer inflation report. Stocks rose yesterday following the release of fresh U.S. economic data while investors waited for this key inflation report. And today investors will digest one of the most important data points, and that is April's Consumer Price Index. That is set to release today and expected to show headline inflation of 3.4%. A slight deceleration from March's 3.5% annual gain in prices. Oil prices rose today on expectations for higher demand as the U.S. dollar weakened, and a report showed U.S. crude and gasoline inventories fell, while the release of inflation data may point to a more supportive economic outlook. And Brent crude futures were up 39 cents or 0.5% at 82.77, and U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures rose 42 cents or 0.5% to 78.44 a barrel. The Internal Revenue Service is breaking out its audit stamp in a major effort to crack down on tax cheats, and the IRS recently released an update on its strategic operating plan, which outlines major projects and outcomes the agency expects to deliver over the next 12 to 18 months with Inflation Reduction Act funding. Copper futures in New York rallied to a record high with a short squeeze that's prompted a scramble to divert metal in other regions to U.S. shores. And a bipartisan group of 4 senators led by Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is recommending that Congress spend at least $32 billion over the next 3 years to develop artificial intelligence and place safeguards around it, writing in a new report that was released this morning that the U.S. needs to harness the opportunities and address the risks of the quickly developing technology. OpenAI released a higher performing and more efficient version of the artificial intelligence technology that underpins its popular generative tool ChatGPT, making it free to all users. Google said it would introduce AI-generated answers to online queries made by users in the U.S. in one of the biggest updates to its search engine in 25 years. The search engine's AI answers, generated by Google's Gemini AI technology, offer a paragraph or two of explanations with links to the online sources that supplied that information. And when Google first showcased its duplex voice assistant technology at its developer conference in 2018, it was both impressive and concerning. Today, at the 2024 meeting, the company may be bringing up those same reactions again, this time by showing off another application of its AI smarts with something called Project Astra. GameStop and AMC are soaring again, with both stocks up more than 100% in the past week. While the moves are sending vibrations through the market that feel like the 2021 meme stock mania, Wall Street strategists say this fresh burst of enthusiasm is far from the madness of 3 years ago. Shares of GameStop and AMC edging higher in volatile pre-market trading today, also extending a rally that began after Roaring Kitty Keith Gill, the central figure behind the 21 meme stock frenzy, resurfaced on social media. Cinema chain AMC gained 6.4% after rising 135% in the past 2 sessions, while video game retailer GameStop rose 6% after hitting its highest level since June 2021 yesterday. Boeing has violated a settlement that allowed the company to avoid criminal prosecution after 2 deadly crashes involving its 737 MAX aircraft more than 5 years ago. It is now up to the Justice Department to decide whether to file charges against Boeing. Prosecutors will tell the court no later than the 7th of July how they plan to proceed. And the wing of former U.S. President Trump's plane that was a Boeing 757 hit a corporate jet while taxiing at West Palm Beach International Airport in Florida. The FAA has said in a statement that a privately owned 757 contacted a parked and unoccupied corporate jet, and the statement did not identify the plane as belonging to Trump, but has been released this morning. The day before Elon Musk fired virtually all of Tesla's electric vehicle charging division last month, they had high hopes of as charging chief Rebecca Tanucci went to meet with Musk about the network's future. 4 former charging network staffers said that after Tanucci had cut between 15 and 20% of staffers 2 weeks earlier, part of much wider layoffs, they believe Musk would affirm plans for a massive charging network expansion. After conquering broadcast syndication and establishing a solid foothold in network primetime TV, Jeopardy is moving into the streaming realm. Amazon's Prime Video has ordered a version of the beloved game show called Pop Culture Jeopardy, which will be the first iteration of the franchise to debut on a streaming service. Sony Pictures Television, which is behind all versions of Jeopardy, is producing it. And it is George Clooney who's going to make his Broadway debut as 1950s television news reporter and anchor Edward R. Murrow in a stage production of his film Good Night and Good Luck. The production will debut in the spring of next year at one of 17 Broadway theaters owned by the Schubert Organization. The 2000 movie, co-written by George Clooney and Grant Heslow, starred David Strahan as Murrow in the early 50s when he challenged the red-baiting antics of Senator Joseph R. McCarthy. And Clooney's work on the black and white film, including as its director, earned his nominations for the 78th Academy Awards in 2006. A refurbished ride vehicle from the iconic Space Mountain ride at Disney's Magic Kingdom recently went for top dollar at an auction, bringing in $43,500. And the news of the vehicle sale came from the California-based auction house Van Eaton Galleries, the host of the recent Joel McGee Auction Part 2 event. And the auction house shared that it had estimated the vehicle, which dates back to the roller coaster's debut in 1975, would draw a winning bid of somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000, but it brought in over $43,000. Dallas police officials told the city council that the department will start to use facial recognition technology to help them identify people linked to crimes. Of these, investigators have already used the technology in a few instances, and it increases efficiency and saves them time. Fort Worth City Council could vote on a plan to provide a property tax cut to some childcare facilities. Last year, voters in Texas approved an amendment giving cities and counties the option of reducing property taxes for some childcare centers. Thinking of bringing a new pet into the U.S. from overseas? It's not quite as simple as it seems. Animals traveling into the country may soon have to quarantine for several days before they are released. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recently announced it is revising regulations for importing dogs into the country to protect the health and safety of people and animals. So starting on the 1st of August this year, all dogs entering the U.S. must appear healthy upon arrival, be at least 6 months of age, be microchipped, and be accompanied by a CDC dog import form, online submission receipt, and have additional documentation which varies depending on where the dog has been in the past 6 months, or if the dog has a current rabies vaccine administered in the U.S. The Biden administration is raising tariffs on $18 billion worth of imports from China, and this includes raising the tariffs on electric vehicles from 25% to 100% and on semiconductors from 25% to 50%. A group of TikTok creators has said they filed suit in U.S. federal courts seeking to block a law signed by President Biden that will force the divestiture of the short video app used by 170 million Americans, or ban it, saying it has had a profound effect on American life. Extreme weather is devastating China's crop of lychees, the jelly-like tropical fruit that's worth $4 billion a year to the country's farmers, and the nation is both the world's largest producer and consumer of the fruit and a significant exporter, and about half of China's lychees are grown in the southern province of Guangdong, where the harvest has fallen foul of an unusually warm winter, followed by heavy spring rains, and as a consequence, prices have jumped. The Biden administration is suggesting the possibility that additional penalties could be put in place if the Chinese makers of electric vehicles try to move their production to Mexico to avoid newly announced import taxes. President Biden directed the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative to impose a total tariff in excess of 102% on Chinese EVs, as well as directing new tariffs on other products, including steel, aluminum, computer chips, and solar cells. A big boost for the Indian stock market. India's weightage in the MSCI Global Standard Index, which tracks in emerging market stocks, has reached a new record high, enhancing the likelihood of increased inflows into its equity markets. And this development has allowed India to close the gap with China on this index. Vanguard Group named former BlackRock executive Salim Ramji as its new chief executive officer and as a member of the board effective the 8th of July. Ramji will replace Tim Buckley, whose departure as the chairman and CEO was announced in February. Buckley has spent more than 3 decades at the company, and under his tenure, Vanguard expanded its assets under management by 80% to $9 trillion. Ramji has joined BlackRock as global head of corporate strategy in 2014, leaving his position of senior partner at McKinsey & Company in January. Aadhar Housing Finance Limited advanced as much as 9% on its first day of trade in India after an IPO offering of 30 billion rupees, which is $359 million, the country's second largest this year. Blackstone-backed mortgage lenders' shares climbed out to as high as 343.70 before closing at 329.45 rupees in Mumbai. The United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, today released new guidance for individuals holding H-1B visas who have recently lost their employment. This comes in the wake of significant job cuts by prominent companies such as Google, Tesla, and Walmart, which have had a profound impact on the lives of numerous H-1B visa holders. And when non-immigrant workers are terminated from their jobs, they may be unaware of the options available to them and might mistakenly believe that departing the country within 60 days is their only choice. Reducing dependence on H-1B visas. Over the past 8 years, India's top 7 IT service companies have experienced a significant 56% decrease in their utilization of the H-1B visa program, which is the premier U.S. work visa. Interestingly, this trend has been the opposite for major American technology companies like Amazon and Google. Experts attributing this declining reliance on H-1B visas by Indian IT companies to their increased local hiring efforts in the U.S. India's merchandise exports last month increased marginally, and the Indian equity benchmark indices BSE, Sensex, and the Nifty 50 ended in the red today after a volatile session. The Life Insurance Corporation of India, a state-owned insurance giant, has announced that it has received a 3-year extension from the Securities and Exchange Board of India to comply with minimum public shareholding norms. And the government this morning said public sector companies Coal India, NMDC, and ONGC Videsh Limited will start looking actively for critical mineral assets overseas. ONGC Videsh Limited is the overseas investment arm of state-owned Oil and Natural Gas Corporation. The Infosys Science Foundation today announced a major revamp of the Infosys Prize, transitioning it from a mid-career award to an early career prize aimed at recognizing rising stars in research and academia. And since its inception 15 years ago, ISF has recognized and awarded. The Infosys Science Foundation has recognized and awarded 92 brilliant minds across disciplines in a demanding global environment. The IPO of Go Digit Insurance, supported by Virat Kohli, opens for subscription today and runs till the 17th of May. The IPO includes a fresh equity issue of 1,125 crore rupees and an offer for sale of up to 5.47 crore shares. Comedy fans have reason to rejoice as popular comedian Zakir Khan is set to fill the television slot left vacant by the Kapil Sharma show, which went off air last year. Kapil Sharma transitioned to a streaming platform with the Great Indian Kapil Show in 2024, leaving a significant gap in TV comedy program, and this gap was temporarily filled by show Madness Machayenge, India Ko Hasaenge, featuring actor Huma Qureshi as a permanent guest. Nagpur's unique and strategic central location had catapulted it on the nation's aviation map for creating a harmonized air traffic management with a continuous airspace over the city along with a centralized cargo hub. But the Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar International Airport continues to wallow in apathy and has fallen off the national radar on most parameters and barely meets standards of a Tier 2 city airport. Pakistani stock extended their overnight rally, hitting an all-time high close above the 74,000 barrier as investors weighed Citibank's expectations that Pakistan would reach an $8 billion new IMF loan deal by July and an easing of interest rates from June. Pakistan Stock Exchange's benchmark share index touched this all-time high today, breaching the key level of 75,000 on hopes that easing inflation could pave the way for interest rate cuts as early as June. And despite some improvement in macroeconomic indicators, the economy continues to grapple with structural bottlenecks, while political uncertainties and inconsistent policies exacerbate the situation, according to the State Bank of Pakistan. Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb has reiterated the government's resolve to expand the tax base by aggressively pursuing the untaxed and undertaxed sectors. And the Office of the Attorney General of Pakistan has identified deficiencies in the Federal Board of Revenue's legal department that result in the filing of a large number of petitions with superior courts for a stay against tax recovery due to non-adherence to legal procedures for taxpayers. And this matter has been brought to the surface in a letter, the second in a week, from the Attorney General's office, and comes after Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's directive to expedite the hearing of cases related to a staggering 2 trillion rupees stuck in courts as the top tax authorities failed to meet their targets in the past 2 months. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the financial news for you, but I do have the final segment of our program today coming up. Stay with me right here.
Party on this summer with the Flex Your Credits electricity plan from Reliance.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're tuned to Community Radio Networks, and this is the final segment of our program today. And today is Wednesday, the 15th of May, and we have all this information for you to get you ready to take on the day today. We already heard the world news, and we have also just heard the financial news. So now let's talk about today. The temperatures heating up today with more heavy rain heading to North Texas tomorrow. There could be areas of flooding and a few severe storms are also possible, but the rain will end early Friday ahead of a hot, dry weekend. Today started the temperatures at 60s under a mostly clear sky, and clouds will increase tonight and could produce a few showers around the area by daybreak. And tomorrow morning's lows will dip into the upper 60s, and this strong upper level disturbance will move across the area tomorrow, producing widespread showers and thunderstorm activity, and some rain may be heavy at times from noon till 9 o'clock. There could be a few isolated severe storms that may contain moderate-sized hail and gusty winds, but the main threat with the system will be areas of flooding in the general vicinity. And that's your weather forecast for today. I have huge thanks going out to Discount Power for their support of community radio networks. Also, huge thanks going out to Houston EB5, the Ahluwalia Law Offices, the Wyndham Hotel in Irving, Digital X-Force, Kinzer Law, Mike Kolachi, Ruchi Palace by Mike Kolachi, as well as Sri Vimal's Venue, Eggholic, Mystic Mandala, and Flash Brush Productions. Huge thanks going out to all of them for their support that make community radio networks possible. We do want to remind you all that yesterday it started and continues today. It's Access 2024. It is the Dallas-Fort Worth Minority Supplier Development Council that bringing this business expo at the Irving Convention Center. And you can go on there at the Irving Convention Center for this expo that is going on. And they, of course, have expected 1,600 attendees over these 2 days, 40-plus roundtable sessions, 90 state agencies participating in State of Texas Spot Bid Fair, opening and closing receptions, special guest luncheon speakers, buying entity and MBE exhibitors, and State of Texas contract seminars, all networking galore out there today, all day. So you may want to stop by the Irving Convention Center today. Also, we do have the Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific onliners, and they are going to be celebrating on the 18th of May. That is on this weekend at 208 South Eckhart Street, where there will be live music performances and lots of culture being portrayed out there. It is on the 18th of May, which is on Saturday. And on the 19th of May, Sunday, the DFW Gujarati Samaj inviting you to join them for a picture-perfect day filled with kite-flying games, delicious food, and a lot of fun. Happening starting at 2:30 this Sunday at the Westlake Park on Main Street in Hickory Creek. Complimentary Gujarati food and pizza for the kids, and of course kites, games, music, garba, and lots of masti out there. Continuing their tradition, the DFW Gujarati Samaj thrilled to host this annual picnic and kite flying event this Sunday, and would love for you all to join them at 2:30 at the Westlake Park. And this event is entirely free, and you are warmly invited to join. We do have Vebhar Arekar, who is a Bharatnatyam dancer who is performing at the Cox Playhouse Theatre in Plano this Sunday at 4 o'clock. Garage Arts Project, in collaboration with the Indian Cultural Heritage Foundation, presents this artist showcase by Vaibhav Arekar, one of leading Bharatnatyam artists in India. An intense, calm, and immersive approach, a key signature style of his performance. His choreography is inspired by modernity within a classical template. This Sunday at 4 o'clock at the Cox Playhouse Theatre in Plano. And then on Sunday itself at 7 o'clock, we have Platinum Productions, Ajani Records, and Diamond Productions presenting The Junoon Show. That's right, it is the Junoon Band that will be performing this Sunday at 7 at the Raleigh Underground. The U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce bringing you the annual AICon 2024, incorporating new tech and AI. And this will be happening on the 23rd from 9:30 to to 2:30 at the Renaissance Hotel in Addison. The morning keynote is Chakri Gautamakulla, the CEO and co-founder of O9 Solutions, and the afternoon keynote is George Baker Sr., the founder and chairman of Park Hub. This is being brought to you by the U.S. India Chamber of Commerce, so you do need to register and get more information on their website, which is usicoc.org. On the 25th of this month, it's the Vaisakhi Mela by Hasda Punjab at the Plano Event Center. And live in concert will be Harjeet Harman, Shipra Goyal, and Gulab Sidhu. On the 25th of this month, the amazing Hasda Punjab Vaisakhi Mela coming up at the Plano Event Center. Now, if you need a booth there, you need to call Billu. His number is 940-391-4517. Hastapunjab.net is their website for more information. The 20th anniversary of the Taste of the Cowboys on Friday, the 7th of June at the Ford Center at the Star in Frisco. And the South Asian Business Alliance are having their monthly event on the 8th of June. And the topic is Franchise Expo. It is going to be from 11 to 1 at the First Union Bank in McKinney at the Craig Ranch. And that's on the 8th of June. And you can always find out more about the South Asian Business Alliance, and that is SABA. On the 8th of June, the BAPS Charities invites you to join them for their annual In the Joy of Others Walk Run to extend support to Irving Cares and MetroCare, two invaluable organizations dedicated to serving the community. Saturday, the 8th of June at 8 o'clock in the morning at 3111 Olympus Boulevard. Brought to you by BAPS Charities. And on the 8th and the 9th of June, there is a 2-day Holistic Festival of Life and Wellness being held at the Plano Nature and Retreat Center by Mystic Mandala. And we do invite all of you to be there. For those that need more information, you can call Vijay at 972-750-1419. Holistic Festival of Life.com for more information. Friday, the 14th of June, Badshah, the Pagal Tour, coming to the Curtis Culwell Center, being brought to you by 360 Shows and Diamond Productions. We do have Shreya Ghoshal also performing at the Curtis Culwell Center that same weekend. It's on Sunday, the 16th at 7 o'clock. This event is being brought to you by A-Cube Media, and they are proudly presenting Shreya Ghoshal, and you'll love her singing. And your tickets can be obtained at sulekha.com or at the curtisculwellcenter.com website. Kal Ho Na Ho, 24/7 Entertainment, Mera Box Entertainment, Charisma Dreams Entertainment presentation of Kal Ho Na Ho. Get ready for this unforgettable night with the legendary trio Shankar Ehsaan Loy as they take the stage at the Toyota Music Factory on the 29th of June. At 8 o'clock for a magical evening filled with the greatest hits and mesmerizing performances. We do have also on that day Nan's Vision presenting Shilpa Shetty, a glamorous night here in Dallas with Shilpa Shetty on the 29th of June. And, of course, the month of June is going to be busy for you all with the World Cup. But we do have also in July, Raring to Roar. And this is the 2024 Texas Super Kings schedule that is out. They open their season against the LA Knight Riders on the 5th of July at the Grand Prairie Stadium at 7:30 in the evening. And you are encouraged to get your tickets right away. Major League Cricket /2024 is the website. So the first match is going to be in Dallas on the 5th of July, and then in Morrisville there are some matches, and then they'll be back in July on the 14th, 19th, and 23rd. The eliminator will be on the 24th of July in Dallas, the qualifier on the 25th of July in Dallas, and the challenger on the 26th of July in Dallas, and the final on the 28th of July in Dallas. So cricket is going to keep you busy in June and July. And then Rohit Sharma, one of the modern greats of the game, is opening his cricket academy in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and that's happening on the 14th of July. The academy's grand launch. Fancy schmancy meet and greet, and you can get pictures with him also. The person to call for more information on this event is Shalu, and her number is 201-245 6299. 201-245-6299. The hitman Rohit Sharma coming to Dallas on the 14th of July. Crick Kingdom Cricket Academy by Rohit Sharma all set to make its grand debut right here in Dallas. And in July, we have the Carom Grandmasters on the 19th, 20th, and 21st of July. And as we get closer to these dates, we will have more information available for you. But that's where your social calendar stands at the moment on this 15th day of May. And let's tell you what else happened on today's date. In 1765, Parliament passes the Quartering Act, outlining the locations and conditions in which the British soldiers are to find room and board in the American colonies. This act of 1765 required the colonies to house the British soldiers in barracks provided by the colonies. And if the barracks were too small to house all the soldiers, then localities were to accommodate the soldiers in local inns, livery stables, alehouses, victualling houses, and the houses of sellers of wine. Should there still be soldiers without accommodation after all such public houses were filled, then the act read that the colonies were then required to take hire and make fit for the reception of His Majesty's forces such and so many uninhabited houses, outhouses, barns, or other buildings as shall be necessary. As the language of the act makes clear, the popular image of redcoats tossing colonists from their bedchambers in order to move in themselves was not the intent of the law, neither was it the practice. However, the New York Colonial Assembly disliked being commanded to provide quarter for British troops, and they preferred to be asked and then to give their consent if they were going to have soldiers in their midst at all. Parliament passes the Quartering Act on today's date in 1765. And in the year 1800, on today's date, President John Adams orders the federal government to pack up and leave Philadelphia and set up shop in the nation's new capital called Washington, D.C. After Congress adjourned its last meeting on that date, 15th of May, he told his cabinet to make sure Congress and all federal offices were up and running smoothly in their new headquarters by the 15th of June, gave them 1 month to move. Philadelphia officially ceased to serve as the nation's capital as of the 11th of June in the year 1800. And at that time, there were only about 125 federal employees. Official documents and archives were transferred from Philadelphia to the new capital by ship over inland waterways. President and Mrs. Adams did not move into the unfinished president's mansion until November of that year. Settling into the White House was a challenge for the new lady. In December, Abigail Adams wrote to a friend later she had to line dry their clothes in what eventually became the East Room. Madeleine Albright, America's first female Secretary of State, is born in Prague, Czechoslovakia, on the 15th of May in 1937, which is now the Czech Republic. The daughter of a Czech diplomat, she fled to England with her family after the Nazis occupied Czechoslovakia. And although she long believed they had fled for political reasons, she learned as an adult that her family was Jewish and that 3 of her grandparents had died in Nazi concentration camps. And the family returned home after World War II ended, but immigrated to the U.S. after a Soviet-sponsored communist coup seized power in Prague. And it is Madeleine Albright, who was born on today's date in 1937 and became America's first female Secretary of State. With the Democrat Bill Clinton in the White House again in 1992, she found herself at the center of Washington's most powerful circle. In 1993, Clinton appointed her ambassador to the UN. In that post, she earned a reputation as a straight-talking defender of American interests and an advocate for an increased role for the U.S. in UN operations. And in 1996, he nominated Madeleine Albright to succeed Warren Christopher as U.S. Secretary of State. After her nomination was unanimously confirmed by the Senate, she was sworn in 1997. And she died at the age of 84 in 2022. Just a month before her death, she spoke out on the impending Russian invasion of Ukraine, writing in a New York Times op-ed that Russian President Putin would be making a historic mistake by invading Ukraine. And that, of course, happened just before she died 2 years ago. On the 15th of May in 1941, the jet-propelled Gloucester-Whittle E-2839 aircraft flies successfully over Cranwell, England, in the first test of an Allied aircraft using jet propulsion. The aircraft's turbojet engine, which produced a powerful thrust of hot air, was devised by Frank Whittle, an English aviation engineer and pilot, generally regarded as the father of the jet engine. And that happened in 1941, on today's date, when the first Allied jet-propelled aircraft flew. And even though the person who did devise this jet engine, Frank Whittle, retired from the Royal Air Force in 1948 with the rank of Air Commodore, that year he was awarded £100,000 by the Royal Commission on awards to inventors and was knighted. And his book, Jet, The Story of a Pioneer, was published in 1953. In 1977, he became a research professor at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, and died in 1996. But the first jet-propelled aircraft that he engineered was flown on today's date in 1941. And in 1942, Lieutenant Ronald Reagan, a cavalry officer, applies for reassignment to the Army Air Force, where he would eventually put his thespian background to use on World War II propaganda files. It was the transfer that was approved, and he was given a job as a public relations officer for the first motion picture unit, and its acronym was pronounced FMPU, FMPU, First Motion Picture Unit, produced military training, morale, and propaganda films to aid the war effort. And FMPU released Frank Capra's Why We Fight series and a documentary of the bomber Memphis Belle, the crew of which completed a standard-setting 25 bombing missions in Europe. And the film was screened on domestic training grounds and in troop camps overseas, as well as in movie theaters at home. And another film called Air Force, which was later renamed Beyond the Line of Duty, conveyed the true story of the heroic feats of aviator Shorty Wellis and his crew, featuring a narration by Ronald Reagan. And that documentary, originally intended to promote investment in war bonds, won an Academy Award in 1943 for Best Short Subject. Reagan went on to narrate or star in 3 more shorts for FMPU, including For God and Country, Cadet Classification, and The Rare Gunner. He also appeared as Johnny Jones in the 1943 full-length musical film, This Is the Army. But he applies for a transfer to the Army Air Force on today's date in 1942, and that is Lieutenant Ronald Reagan, a cavalry officer. On the 15th of May 1942 also, a bill establishing a women's corps in the U.S. Army becomes law, creating the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps and granting women official military status. That happened on today's date in 1942. And the bill to create a Women's Auxiliary Army Corps would not be passed into law for a year after it was introduced. The bombing of Pearl Harbor was a great incentive, but finally gained official status and salary, but still not all the benefits accorded to men. And thousands of women enlisted in light of this new legislation, and the auxiliary later was dropped from the name, and the Women's Army Corps received full army benefits in keeping with their male counterparts. And the Women's Army Corps performed a wide variety of jobs, releasing a man for combat, as the Army, sensitive to public misgivings about women in the military, had touted. But those jobs range from clerk to radio operator, electrician to air traffic controller. Women served in virtually every theater of engagement from North Africa to Asia. And it would take until 1978 before the Army would become sexually integrated, and women participating as merely an auxiliary arm in the military would be history. And it would not be until 1980 that 16,000 women who had joined the earlier group would receive veterans' benefits. Legislation creating the Women's Army Corps becomes a law on the 15th of May in 1942. And on that same day in 1942, gasoline rationing begins in 17 eastern states as an attempt to help the American war effort during World War II. And by the end of the year, President Franklin Roosevelt had ensured that mandatory gasoline rationing was in effect in all 48 states. America had been debating its entrance into World War II until the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, and the following day, Congress almost unanimously approved Roosevelt's request for a declaration of war against Japan, and 3 days later, Japan's allies, Germany and Italy, declared war against the U.S. And on the home front, Ordinary Americans almost immediately felt the impact of the war as the economy quickly shifted from a focus on consumer goods into full-time war production. As part of this transformation, women went to work in the factories to replace enlisted men. Automobile factories began producing tanks and planes for Allied forces, and households were required to limit their consumption of such products as rubber, gasoline, sugar, alcohol, and cigarettes. And rubber was the first commodity to be rationed after the Japanese invasion of the Dutch East Indies cut off the U.S. supply, and the shortage of rubber affected the availability of products such as tires. And the rationing of gasoline, it was reasoned, would conserve rubber by reducing the number of miles Americans drove. And 17 states put gasoline rationing into effect on today's date, the 15th of May, in 1942. And in 1982, on the 15th of May, it was a song that came up as one of the best ever. And that song, Ebony and Ivory, took the top spot in the Billboard Hot 100, holding the spot for 7 weeks. Recorded as a duet. With the great Stevie Wonder, it was the biggest hit record of Paul McCartney's post-Beatles career. Paul McCartney had been a fan of Stevie Wonder's for many years before they first met. Even included a braille message for Stevie, "We love you," on the back of his 1973 Wings album called Red Rose Speedway.
There is good and bad in everyone. And we learn to live. We learn to give each other what we need to survive.
Not only yielded a smash hit record that topped the charts on this day in 1982, but it also continued a trend towards pop music power couplings that was particularly prevalent in the 80s.
Harmony, side by side on my piano keyboard. Oh Lord, why don't we?
Ebony and Ivory began its 7-week run at number 1 on the pop charts on today's date in 1982. And then more than 8 years after they intervened in Afghanistan to support the pro-communist government, it was the Soviet troops that began their withdrawal on today's date. In 1988, the event marked the beginning of the end of a long, bloody and fruitless Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. And that happened on today's date in 1988. The Soviets decided to extricate itself from the situation that had occurred there, and Russian leader Mikhail Gorbachev saw the Afghan intervention as an increasing drain on the Soviet economy, and the Russian people were tired of a war that many Westerners referred to as Russia's Vietnam. For Afghanistan, the Soviet withdrawal did not mean an end to the fighting. However, the Muslim rebels eventually succeeded in establishing control over Afghanistan in 1992. But the Soviets did begin their withdrawal from Afghanistan on the 15th of May in 1988. And after decades of environmental damage and legal wrangling, General Electric finally begins its government-mandated efforts to clean the Hudson River. Happened on today's date in the year 2009. One of America's largest and most prestigious corporations, General Electric, had dumped harmful chemicals into the river for years and spent a fortune trying to avoid that cleanup. GE's plants at the Hudson Falls and Fort Edward, 2 towns in upstate New York, dumped polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, a harmful compound manufactured for GE by Monsanto, into the Hudson from 1947 till 1977. Now, the state of New York banned fishing in the upper Hudson due to the pollution. And in 1984, roughly 200-mile stretch of the river was declared a Superfund site, requiring GE to pay for that cleanup. Via many lawsuits, lobbying efforts, and public relations campaigns, GE fought back until 2002. And when the EPA announced a final decision that the corporation would, in fact, have to foot the bill, even then, GE dragged its feet for 7 years before dredging finally began. And the dredging, which cost GE $1.6 billion, lasted from 2009 until 2015. By all accounts, significant progress was made, and observers have applauded the return of some of the river's wildlife. Still, few believe that GE truly cleaned up its mess. Despite the removal of 3 million cubic yards of contaminated sediments, the state has challenged the EPA's assertion that GE held up its end of the bargain, pointing to studies that show significant levels of PCBs in the Hudson. And the state still warns children and those who may bear children against eating fish and other wildlife caught in the Hudson, advising adult men to limit their consumption, as well as counseling citizens to try to avoid swallowing the river's water. But it was GE that finally initiated the cleanup of the polluted Hudson River on today's date, the 15th of May in 2009. And those, ladies and gentlemen, were some of the stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date, the 15th of May. Want to wish you all a happy day, and may you achieve whatever it is that you are wishing for. And I'll see you all tomorrow morning. This is Community Radio Network signing off. We have lots of music in store for you, but for those that would like to reach me directly, my number is 214-675-1754.